Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
My sister told me not to come to Christmas because I bring the mood down. No explanation, no invite, just a text. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just took back the brand new car I bought her last year. And what happened next? You'll want to sit down for that part. It came on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between a pharmacy receipt and a reminder from my dentist. One short text. Hey, just wanted to let you know we're keeping it small this Christmas. No negativity this year. Hope you understand. That was it. No Merry Christmas. No invitation, not even a passive-aggressive smiley face to soften the blow. Just a short, sharp message from my younger sister Jenna, the one who, last December, had cried in my kitchen because her car wouldn't start, and she didn't have the credit to finance a new one. The same sister I'd handed keys to a week later, pretending like it wasn't a big deal. Like buying her a nearly new Mazda was just something I happened to have budgeted for. I didn't understand. And for once, I didn't ask for clarification. I sat there for a long minute, phone in my hand, not angry, not sad, just hollow. Like someone had let the air out of the room. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. The little digs, the subtle dismissals, the way Jenna could make me feel like a cold, joy-sucking machine with nothing but spreadsheets and sarcasm to offer the family. It's been like that since we were kids, honestly. Jenna with the big eyes and bigger stories, always on the edge of some emotional crisis. Me with the straight posture and quiet answers. Always being told I needed to soften my tone or lighten up because God forbid I remind anyone that life sometimes requires responsibility. But that morning, something shifted. I didn't respond to the text. I didn't call her. I didn't even tell our dad, who I knew would just say, "It's Christmas, Sarah. Can't you just let it go?" Instead, I grabbed my coat, slipped on a pair of gloves, and drove across town to where Jenna lived. A 2-bedroom rental with a decorative wreath already hanging crookedly on the door, and fake snow sprayed on the windows like a crime scene from a cheap holiday commercial. The car was there, parked on the curb, clean but dusty, the way things get when someone pretends to care but really doesn't. I had kept myself on the title because I'm not a complete idiot. I had the spare key, and I had no intention of being loud, cruel, or dramatic. That's never been my style. I just walked up to it, slid into the driver's seat like I'd never left it, and turned the ignition. It purred to life instantly. Funny how reliable something can be when it's not being used to run from responsibility. I didn't look toward the window. I didn't check if she saw me. I just drove away, past the strip mall where she used to work part-time, past the park where we took pictures last year wearing matching reindeer ears because she insisted it would make Mom smile from heaven. Once I hit the highway, it hit me. Not sadness, not regret, but this strange sensation I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the vengeful, petty kind, but the kind that comes from finally acting on what you've known for too long. That someone has been eating at your generosity with a smile and calling it gratitude. That someone has been telling the rest of the family you're bitter and sharp, when in truth, you're just exhausted from carrying everything they pretend not to notice. Jenna had always played the part of the sweet, struggling sister, the one who just needed a little help, just one more boost. Just one more sacrifice from someone like me who was always doing fine anyway. I was the one with the stable job, the house with a mortgage I actually paid, the health insurance, the savings account, the dental plan. And apparently that stability meant I was expected to not only give, but give quietly, without ever pointing out how often she took. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, I already knew what I'd do next. The car wasn't the end, it was just the start. For years, I'd handed over pieces of my time, my money, my emotional bandwidth like they were leftovers. Birthday loans that never got paid back. Therapy sessions she swore she couldn't afford, on my card. A security deposit I never saw again. The laptop she said was for work, but ended up being used to post Etsy crafts that somehow never turned a profit. And every time I said nothing, every time I swallowed the resentment like a bitter pill, I was told I was the strong one, the responsible one, the unshakable one. But here's the thing no one tells you about always being the strong one. Eventually, you start to realize they've built their whole damn house on your back and didn't even bother to invite you in for dinner. So I parked the car in my garage, shut the door, and went inside without turning on the lights. My phone buzzed once, then twice, then a third time. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly who it was and what she would say. That I was being unreasonable, overreacting, ruining Christmas. That she never meant it that way. That I should have just asked before taking the car. That I should calm down and think about the family. But for once, I wasn't interested in thinking about anyone but myself. I poured a glass of wine, kicked off my boots, and looked at the Christmas tree in my living room. Half lit, slightly lopsided, but mine. Paid for, assembled, decorated, enjoyed by me and no one else. And in that moment, I made a quiet promise. If Jenna wanted a small Christmas without negativity, she was absolutely going to get one. But starting now, I was done making her life easier. I was done pretending her chaos was charming. I was done being the emotional act that let her feel like the center of a universe she never even earned a place in. I was going to take back everything, not just the car, but the narrative. And if that made me the villain of the family text chain, then so be it. Because villains at least get to sleep at night. The silence didn't last long. It never does in families like mine, where drama doesn't explode so much as it leaks, slowly, passively, under the surface, until someone finally slips and the whole thing bursts like a cracked pipe that everyone pretends they never heard hissing. 2 days after I drove away with the car, my father called me while I was in line at the grocery store, asking if I had borrowed Jenna's vehicle for some reason she couldn't explain. I stood there between the frozen vegetables and overpriced holiday cookies, listening to the irritation in his voice. Not quite anger, not yet, but disappointment. The same tone he always reserved for moments when I stopped playing my part, when I stopped being the grown-up in a house full of emotional toddlers. I told him the truth, flat and unapologetic, that it wasn't her car to begin with, that my name was on the title, that I had simply taken back what I'd paid for. And when he tried to say something about how it wasn't the time, how it was Christmas, and people were under a lot of stress, I told him that stress doesn't entitle you to keep what was never yours, and that if anyone wanted to send Jenna a car this year, they could go ahead and add it to their Amazon cart. That was the last time we spoke that week. The thing about families, especially ours, is that they tend to rewrite history the moment it becomes inconvenient. Within hours, I was the story, not the sister who'd spent years helping, not the one who bought groceries when Jenna couldn't, paid electric bills when they lapsed, or sat through crying phone calls about her husband's lost jobs and depression spells. No. Now I was the one who humiliated Jenna by taking away her car like she was a child, who could have handled things better, who was punishing her during the holidays. The irony of it all? No one had even asked why Jenna sent that message to begin with. No one asked why she uninvited her only sibling to a holiday dinner we'd shared for nearly 40 years. Because in our family, Jenna's missteps have always been absorbed, softened, excused, by charm, by tears, by the sheer weight of expectations that told everyone to coddle the fragile one and keep the strong one silent. But I had stopped being silent. I didn't say much in the family group chat. I didn't need to. When Jenna posted a vague message, "Some people only give to control you. Watch who you let in your life," I didn't respond. When her husband Alan replied with something about toxic behavior, I didn't take the bait. Instead, I logged into the old Gmail account I had created for Jenna the year she said she wanted to start a business, selling handmade candles and knitwear, the one tied to her Etsy shop, her PayPal account, and the website I'd paid to host for over 18 months. She hadn't changed the password. She never did. I took down the site, logged out, and canceled the domain renewal. Then I opened my banking app and pulled the last 5 months of automatic payments I'd been making toward the small business credit card she'd never actually used for business. I marked them all, took screenshots, and filed a dispute for the fraudulent charges. I didn't tell her. I didn't warn her. I just let the first domino fall and watched from a distance. By the time Jenna noticed, 2 days later, she was already locked out of her shop's back end and facing a flagged PayPal account. Her message came at 2:13 in the morning. "What the hell are you doing? Are you seriously sabotaging my business?" There was no greeting, no punctuation beyond a single question mark, and no acknowledgement of what had come before. No mention of the text she sent, the car she lost, or the part where she had erased me from a holiday like I was an employee on unpaid leave. I stared at that message for a long time before responding with a sentence I had never said to her in our entire adult lives. "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just taking back what I gave when I still thought you deserved it." The typing dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again, and then nothing. I don't know why I thought that might be the end of it, a clean cut, a final swipe of the knife, but I suppose part of me was still hoping she'd realize, really see the enormity of what she had done. Not just this year, but all the years before. How she had taken and taken and taken, not because she was desperate or malicious, but because she believed it was owed to her, that my stability was some kind of shared asset she could dip into whenever her own choices didn't pan out. I waited for that message, an apology, a "you're right." Even a fake attempt at reconciliation would have been something, but silence has a weight of its own. It clings to your chest and seeps into your lungs like smoke, and before long you start to realize that it's not absence. It's rejection with a polite face. So I did what I always do when I can't sleep. I started cleaning. I opened drawers, deleted old voicemails, archived files, cleared out years of clutter that had accumulated under the weight of misplaced hope. And in a dusty file folder labeled Family Stuff, I found a copy of the lease I had co-signed for Jenna's apartment when her credit was still wrecked from an unpaid gym membership and a maxed out Target card. I stared at my signature, bold and stupid beneath hers, and I made a decision right then and there. I wasn't going to fight her. I wasn't going to beg to be invited to a dinner I'd already been erased from. I was going to quietly step back and let her finally stand on her own. But the moment I submitted the formal withdrawal of financial liability, I knew I hadn't seen the worst of it yet, because Jenna wasn't someone who accepted consequences. She was someone who rewrote the story and made sure everyone else played their part. And something told me the script was already changing. It's a strange kind of loneliness that settles in when you realize your entire family has decided you're the problem, not because of what you did, but because of what you stopped doing. The giving, the forgiving, the endless smiling through clenched teeth and pretending that manipulation felt like love. That week, as the world wrapped itself in garland and synthetic cheer, I walked through grocery stores lit with sterile lights and heard carols playing on repeat. Each one like a grating reminder that somewhere, someone was choosing to believe that I had ruined Christmas over a car. They didn't see the years, the patterns, the way Jenna's charm could curve around the truth like a ribbon around a lie. They only saw the headlines she planted. Sarah took her car back. Sarah shut down her shop. Sarah abandoned her sister at the worst possible time. And because people don't like nuance when drama offers such easy roles to play, they stepped into line like actors hitting their marks. I had stopped replying to the family chat altogether, not out of bitterness, but because there was simply no space left in me to keep repeating what no one wanted to hear. And in that silence, they filled in their own version of the story, each cousin and aunt and uncle who barely knew the details, chiming in with unsolicited sermons about how family means forgiveness and how Christmas is for healing, not hurting. Not a single person asked why I had bought Jenna a car in the first place, or why I still had access to her business accounts, or what I had done in the shadows to keep her disasters from becoming catastrophes. They didn't want those answers. They wanted to believe in a fairy tale where one sister was just a bit dramatic, and the other was rigid and controlling, and probably always had been. But I wasn't angry, not in the way they assumed. What I felt was colder than anger, quieter than rage. It was the clarity that comes when something finally snaps after being pulled too tight for too long. I had spent years carrying burdens I never volunteered for, And now that I was finally laying them down, the people who had watched me stagger under the weight were acting like I was the one who'd changed. And maybe I had, maybe that was the point. The moment that sealed it didn't come from Jenna, or from the group chat, or even from my father. It came in the form of an envelope slid through my mail slot, a plain white rectangle with my name scrawled in hurried ink. No return address, no stamp. Inside was a printout, something that had clearly been screenshotted from Jenna's phone, a PayPal transfer history, several small payments from an account I didn't recognize, all marked "Thank you, love you, you saved me." They weren't from Jenna, they were from my father. At first I didn't understand. The dates were recent, the names cryptic, the amounts small but frequent, 20 here, 50 there, $100 every now and then. But then it clicked. These were not payments Jenna had received from struggling friends. They were payments Jenna had sent, quietly, consistently, to a private Venmo account I traced back to someone named Kyle D., a man I remembered from a brief, unfortunate period 5 years ago, when Jenna had fallen for what she described as a brilliant entrepreneur who was always on the verge of something big. That something big turned out to be a pyramid scheme and a DUI. And suddenly everything made sense in the worst way possible. All the times she'd said she needed help with groceries, all the months her rent was short by just a little, the laptop, the business fees, the car, the credit card, all part of a machine designed not to survive, but to sustain someone else's failure. Not just her own anymore, but someone else's, someone who had apparently re-entered her life like a bad habit dressed in hope. I didn't know if my father knew, and I didn't care. What shook me wasn't the money itself, but the fact that she had played all of us, and kept playing, even now, even after I had started pulling away. So I sent a message, not to Jenna, but to the group chat. It was the first thing I had typed in days, and I kept it short. Not out of restraint, but because truth needs no ornament. I wrote, "For those defending Jenna, check your bank statements. Some of you have been more generous than you know." Then I attached one screenshot, not with names, but with enough identifiers to raise eyebrows, and pressed send. The reaction was swift. 2 cousins left the chat within minutes. One aunt, always the loudest about keeping the peace, sent me a private message asking if I was sure this was necessary. My father didn't say a word. But then again, he hadn't said anything real to me in years. Jenna, for her part, did not reply. But a few hours later, I saw a new profile picture on her social media, a smiling shot of her and Kyle D. in front of a Christmas tree, captioned, "Second chances are everything." The kind of smile that dares you to say something. The kind of smile that says, "I win," even when there's nothing left to win. But what she didn't know, what she never understood, is that I wasn't playing anymore. There was no game left, just facts, just receipts, just a woman who had finally stopped being the foundation for someone else's circus. And as I sat there that night, staring at the photo, I realized that this wasn't a war of words or gifts or public perception. This was a cold war, silent, precise, unrelenting. And the next move was mine. There's a specific kind of quiet that sets in once you realize the bridges you burned behind you were the same ones everyone else expected you to keep repairing, no matter how many times they collapsed under their own weight. It's not the silence of isolation or defeat, but the eerie stillness of clarity, the moment when you finally see people not for who they claim to be in birthday cards or Facebook tributes, but for who they really are when the spotlight shifts and they think you've stopped paying attention. That week, as the rest of the world posted carefully filtered pictures of holiday centerpieces and children in matching pajamas, I sat at my dining table with a pen in one hand and the lease agreement for Jenna's apartment in the other, rereading the fine print not because I didn't understand it, but because it felt like an autopsy, a detailed examination of every line I had once crossed out of guilt or obligation or that stubborn, lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, she would change. But Jenna didn't change. She adapted. She evolved. She twisted. The lease had my name right there beneath hers, bold and permanent and legal. I had signed it a year and a half ago after a phone call where she cried so hard I could barely make out the words. Something about her last landlord being creepy. Something about how no one else would approve her. Something about needing just this one chance to start over. And like always, I said yes, not because I believed she'd succeed this time, but because I couldn't live with the idea of her sleeping in her car. A car, of course, that I'd also paid for. But sitting there now, with the lease spread out in front of me, and her social media practically glowing with vacation photos and captions about healing journeys, I felt something shift in my spine, a cold resolve hardening where forgiveness used to live. I called the landlord the next morning, polite, calm, direct. I told him I was withdrawing my name from the lease as co-signer, effective immediately, and I didn't flinch when he warned me it could affect Jenna's status as a tenant. I said I understood. I said I accepted the risk. What I didn't say was that the only thing I regretted was not doing it sooner. And then, because spite is best served with precision, I emailed the tenant insurance company and removed my policy as well. It was time, I figured, for Jenna to start paying for the life she kept pretending she'd built herself. The reaction came faster than I expected. Jenna didn't call, she didn't text. She didn't even send one of her dramatic 3-paragraph rants filled with misused capital letters and veiled threats. Instead, she posted a photo of a moving truck, not her stuff being packed, but a friend's truck, someone helping someone else, with the caption, "Some people would rather see you homeless than admit they're bitter." The likes rolled in, the comments poured out, people I hadn't spoken to in years, people who knew nothing beyond what she fed them, wrote things like, "You're so strong," and "Keep your head up," and "They'll regret it when you're thriving." I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something so painfully simple it stunned me. Jenna didn't want help. She wanted a villain. She needed someone to play the cold-hearted sister so she could continue playing the brave survivor, the underdog who overcame a lifetime of cruelty from the one person who had actually given her the most. And if I refused to be that villain, she'd cast me in the role anyway. So I leaned into it. I embraced it. If she wanted a story where I was the monster, then fine. I'd be the monster who sent receipts. And speaking of receipts, I started digging. Through my email, through my banking records, through every dusty folder of digital evidence I had accumulated over a decade of being the family lifeline. I found emails where I'd covered her missed credit card payments, Venmo screenshots of her asking for gas money while tagging herself at restaurants, a whole archive of birthday gifts that cost more than my own rent during my lean years. All while she cried to anyone who would listen that I was selfish and judgmental and incapable of real love. I compiled everything. I didn't send it. I didn't post it. But I kept it. Not as proof for others, because they had already chosen their sides, but as a reminder to myself. For the next time I started to doubt whether I had done too much or too little. And then, just when I thought the drama had found its final resting place, I stumbled upon something I hadn't expected. A voicemail from our mother buried in a saved folder from years ago, probably from the last Christmas we all spent together before her health started to unravel. I played it out of curiosity, not sentiment, expecting nothing more than a "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," or a comment about some forgotten family dish. But what I heard made my breath catch halfway through a sip of coffee. "Sarah," she said, her voice warm but weighted with something deeper, something she rarely allowed to surface. "I know you think no one notices everything you do, and maybe it feels like Jenna always gets the easy road. But I see you. I see how you hold this family together when no one else even thinks to thank you. And I just want you to know, even if no one says it, I'm proud of you. Don't ever let them make you feel small for being strong." The message ended. No music, no laughter, just silence. The kind of silence that follows a truth too heavy to carry in public. I sat there for a long time, phone still in my hand, unsure if I felt vindicated or hollow, because that was the thing about being strong for too long. Eventually, people forgot it wasn't your natural state. They forgot you bled too, just quieter. I didn't tell anyone about the voicemail. I didn't play it for my father, who would have dismissed it with some vague comment about Mom always being too soft on me. I didn't mention it to Jenna, Who would have found a way to turn it into proof that I had always been the favorite? I just saved it. One last gift I wasn't going to share. And on the morning of Christmas Eve, I wrapped up the final piece of my quiet rebellion. I scheduled a notice to be delivered to Jenna's apartment, a formal termination of the insurance, the lease cosign, and a note from the bank informing her that the auto loan she thought was frozen had now officially been closed under my authority. And at the bottom, in my own handwriting, I added one line. This is what accountability looks like. Not punishment, not revenge, just a receipt. Then I sealed the envelope, dropped it into the outgoing mailbox, and went back inside to make dinner, for one. Christmas morning arrived not with the warmth of carols, or the clatter of footsteps down the hallway, or the rustling of hastily torn wrapping paper, but with a stillness so complete it felt almost orchestrated. A kind of deliberate hush that blanketed the world beyond my windows and pressed itself into the walls of my quiet home like snowfall that no one would ever step into. The air outside was crisp. The sky, that particular shade of winter gray that never quite turns to blue. And inside, my modest tree sat glowing in the corner, lopsided but defiant. A stubborn symbol of a holiday I'd once tried so hard to make perfect for people who now pretended I didn't exist. There were no presents beneath it this year, not for anyone but myself, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel the gnawing need to perform. Not as the dutiful daughter, not as the peacekeeping sibling, and certainly not as the financial backbone propping up Jenna's curated sense of struggle. I spent the morning exactly as I'd planned, alone, unbothered, and unapologetic, sipping coffee from my favorite chipped mug, reading a book I'd been meaning to finish for months, and allowing my mind finally to settle into the rhythm of stillness without guilt. There were no pity invitations from extended relatives, no performative texts pretending to miss me, no backhanded holiday messages reminding me that we're still family no matter what. And while that silence would have once wounded me deeply, this year it felt like freedom wrapped in velvet, soft, complete, and wholly mine. Around noon, just as I was heating up a tray of roasted vegetables I'd prepared the night before, a knock at the door broke through the quiet, sharp, intentional, and followed by the sound of something being placed down gently on the porch. I opened the door cautiously, half expecting a delivery driver, or perhaps even one of my more guilt-ridden cousins with some Hallmark-inspired gesture. But what I found instead was a plain brown box, medium-sized, no label, no return address, just my name written in thick black marker across the top. My full name, the one only Jenna ever used when she was trying to remind me we were blood. I brought it inside, placed it on the kitchen counter, and stared at it for a long moment before slicing through the tape with a butter knife. Inside, beneath a layer of crumpled newspaper, was a single photograph printed on glossy paper, a shot of Jenna, unmistakably her. Despite the oversized sunglasses and forced smile, standing in front of a tow lot office, the kind with sun-faded signs and mismatched paint. Behind her, half obscured by the angle of the camera, was the car, the one I had reclaimed weeks earlier, now parked awkwardly behind a chain-link fence, the same red Mazda she once called the best thing anyone's ever done for me. But it wasn't the image itself that made me grip the edge of the counter. It was what she was holding in her hand, the keys dangling from her index finger like a prize, glinting under the weak winter sun. And pinned to the bottom of the photo, taped neatly and with unsettling precision, was a note written in Jenna's handwriting, the same looping, inconsistent cursive she'd used in every birthday card, apology letter, and last-minute plea for help I'd ever received. "You always said I'd never learn," the note read. "Guess I learned from you." That was it. No explanation, no accusation, no overt malice. Just one sentence. So deceptively simple, and yet so charged with history, it felt like a slap wrapped in silk. I stood there for a long time, rereading the words, staring at her smile in the photo, wondering what exactly she meant, and how far she'd gone to send this particular message. Had she tracked the car? Paid someone at the impound lot to take the picture? Was she trying to prove that she'd taken back control? That she could play the same cold game I had mastered? Or was this her way of telling me that she had finally become what I'd feared? Someone who knew how to turn every gesture, every gift, every fragment of shared history into a tool for performance and power? I wanted to laugh, or scream, or maybe cry. But instead, I found myself feeling nothing at all. Not numbness exactly, but something deeper. Something that felt like the final click of a lock turning after a long, slow rotation. Because in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just a retaliation or a petty stunt. It was a message, one I wasn't sure she even fully understood herself. That the cycle we'd both lived inside for so long had finally devoured us both. She had learned, yes, but not the lesson I had hoped. Not accountability, not growth, not the uncomfortable strength it takes to admit when you've been given more than you deserve. What she had learned was how to mirror, how to weaponize quiet, how to disguise manipulation as independence, how to craft a narrative so neatly wrapped in ambiguity that anyone looking from the outside might believe she had won. But the truth was messier and far less satisfying. I placed the photo back into the box, sealed it shut, and shoved it into the back of the hall closet, behind a stack of winter blankets and boxes of old ornaments I no longer used. And as I closed the closet door, I understood, perhaps for the first time, that this wasn't a story about revenge or redemption. It wasn't even a story about family, not really. It was about letting go of the hope that people who've benefited from your silence will ever thank you for speaking. About accepting that sometimes the only closure you get is the quiet knowledge that you stopped the pattern before it swallowed the last of you. That night, as the city flickered with artificial cheer and strangers exchanged gifts wrapped in red and gold, I poured myself a final glass of wine, lit a candle that smelled like pine and smoke, and sat in the dim light of my lopsided tree, unbothered by the absence of voices, unshaken by the weight of old roles abandoned. Somewhere out there, Jenna was likely retelling a version of the story that made her the victim and me the villain. And for once, I didn't feel the need to correct it. Let her have her photo, let her keep the keys. Let her believe she won. Some endings don't need applause. Some endings don't even need words. They just need silence, and a door that finally, quietly closes.